Chair, it's the chief. I think we are ready to go. We are live.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to those watching now or those that may watch later. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The Barrie Police Service acknowledges this sacred land has been the site for human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Anishinaabeg Nation. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Bigwitch. A motion to approve the agenda for May 20th, 21 that was distributed in advance. Mr. Khan? Ms. Strawn, any questions on the minutes? Those in favor?
In favor.
None. Thank you. Seeing none. Declaration of any conflicts or any conflicts that members of the board would like to bring to the attention. Seeing none. The minutes from our meeting of April the 15th, 2021 were included in the package. Motion, please, to approve those. Mr. Khan, second, and Ms. Strawn. Any comments or questions on the minutes? Those in favor? Opposed?
Favor.
None. Chief, I'll hand it over to you, please, for some exciting 20-year medals or service medals, as well as some recognition of some staff. Chief, please.
Good morning, members of the board and members of the community. In the spring of each year, the Barrie Police Service acknowledges community members, services members for their contribution or life-saving awards. And we also acknowledge members of the service that have achieved 20 years and 30 years in policing through an exemplary medal or an award. So today we're acknowledging 2 individuals for their exemplary medal and 1 individual for the Certified Municipal Manager's accreditation. So we first have Detective Mike Ross. He joined the Barrie Police Service in 1999. And in the year 2000, he attended the Ontario Police College as a recruit. He spent the next 7 years in uniform as a frontline officer. And then in 2008, he joined the Tactical Support Unit, where he specialized in a precision rifle operator as well as a sniper. Detective Ross was designated as a team leader on the TAC team before he was promoted to sergeant in 2016. From 2016 to 2019, he was a patrol sergeant in uniform services or operational services. And in 2019, he was then transferred to investigative services to work with a team of investigators in our general assignments area, where he continues today. So congratulations to Mike Ross on his exemplary medal, and I'll just display that for members of the community and the board. So congratulations, Mike, and thank you very much for your ongoing contribution. I'd also like to acknowledge Sergeant Yelena Rickovic. She began her policing career also with the Barrie Police Service in 1999 as a recruit. During her time with the service, she has worked in a number of different units, including our High Enforcement Action Team, Offender Management, and our Homicide Unit. She was promoted to sergeant in January of 2019 and was assigned to Operational Services, where she performed uniform patrol. Since 2020, Yelena has joined our Professional Standards Unit. Yelena is very much proud of her Croatian heritage and has been able to utilize her language skills to assist in several investigations over the year, including the Molson Brewery grow operations, has assisted with our domestic violence victims, ensuring our accused persons understand their rights and the arrest process, and assisted in reuniting a missing Croatian-speaking Alzheimer's patient with her family. In addition to the work that she does professionally, she'd like to recognize the love and support she has always received from her husband, OPP Detective Sergeant Chris Bennett, and her two stepdaughters, Haley and Leah, and her daughters, Nicole and Carmen. So congratulations, Yelena, for your exemplary award medal. And this will be presented personally also, but it's an opportunity for the board to connect virtually with our members. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Detective Ross and Sergeant Reckenbeck, thank you very much for your service on behalf of the board. 20 years is a significant time, and the contribution you've made to our services was well documented. So thank you very much on behalf of the board.
Thank you.
And also,
Chief, back to you.
Okay, and also I'd like to acknowledge Staff Sergeant Carl Moore. He joined the Barrie Police Service in 1998 as a cadet, and several months later he went to the Ontario Police College for his recruit training. He has spent his early careers in numerous areas within operational services, and he was a member of the Emergency Response Unit that later became our full-time Tactical Support Unit in 2006. And he served as a team leader until 2013. And in March of that year, he was promoted to the rank of sergeant, where he worked in Operational Services, Tactical Support Unit. And in 2017, he became the executive officer to the Office of the Chief, which was to me, which also included responsibilities in our corporate communications. We'd like to acknowledge that he was promoted to Staff Sergeant in 2019 and is currently responsible for our Marine Unit, Traffic Services, Community Services Unit, and our Emergency Support Unit and Tactical Support Unit. Most recently, with the pandemic response, he has been assigned to our Police Operations Center. And in 2019, he completed his designated or disaster and management program at Ryerson. And in 20 of December last year, he graduated from the Rotman School of Management Police Leadership Program. He continues to volunteer where possible with Special Olympics and the Barrie Ball Hockey Club. And he is the deputy chair of the Community Relations Committee at St. John's Ambulance. So we're here to congratulate Sergeant Moore on his Ontario Municipal Manager's Certification, Level 3 Police Professional. Congratulations, Carl.
Thank you, Chief.
Congratulations, Staff Sergeant Moore. It's great to see that you continue to your education, continue to develop, and continue to grow. So the success of our services is dependent on that. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Chief, our 2020 annual report was included in our package, and I know you, Inspector Burke and Staff Sergeant Richter and Victoria have worked hard on it, but I'll allow you please to introduce them and walk us through our 2020 annual report review. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. You have graciously introduced all of our members that are involved in our annual report, and this is the first time the board has had an opportunity to view what the published document will look like, with our commitment to providing that to the community and to the board next month. But we thought we would provide you a high-level overview of what you can expect in our annual report and highlight the phenomenal work that is regularly done by members of the Barrie Police Service with support of the community. So I will pass it on to Inspector Burke and Victoria and Rose. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much, Chief. So this will be we're going to refer to this as the sneak preview of the upcoming annual report. There has been a lot of work done so far. Certainly some innovative ideas have been applied to that. I'm not going to take credit for the innovation. I'm certainly going to pass that on to Staff Sergeant Richter, Victoria, and Jeanette Mays out of our corporate communications. So without further ado, I'd just like to take a short 10 minutes or so and just give you an overview of what to expect when we have the final product. Victoria and Staff Sergeant Richter, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. We are just going to get the PowerPoint set up for you here today. And can everybody see that now?
Yes, we can, Rose. Thank you.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. My name is Staff Sergeant Richter, and with me today is the team that has been working on completing the annual report. That including Inspector Burke, Victoria, our strategic planner, and Jeanette from corporate communications. We will be providing a sneak peek of the Barrie Police Service 2020 annual report. Please note in this presentation, you will see some images and pages that are samples and are still in draft format and may be subject to changes. With that in mind, let's explore some of the annual report. This year's annual report is based on the structure used in the 2019 annual report. This offers consistency and ensures all areas of the service are showcased. There are a few additions to the report layout based on events from 2020. These include a page outlining the Barrie Police Service board members, the appointment of Deputy Chief Allen, the retirement of Deputy Chief Weatherall, an overview of our systemic review of organizational culture and systems, details regarding the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, a highlight of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan alongside the 2020 Community Safety Survey results. And finally, the report will conclude with a 2020 to 2022 roadmap. This will be a look forward that highlights their strategic priorities, objectives, and actions of the current strategic plan. It reinforces that the service has set goals and actions in place to ensure we are accountable and continue to evolve as the city of Barrie grows. There are also two areas in the report that are unique to this year. The first being our transition to the Barrie Simcoe Emergency Services campus. Here we highlight some of our journey from 29 Spurling Drive to the new 110 Fairview Road location and the services offered at our new facility. The second area unique to 2020 is our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Here we include an overview of protective measures, collaboration with community partners, and accountability to the public. For a quick look at these two areas of the annual report, you will have noticed that there are several illustrations and elements that are like our current strategic plan. These similarities in design are intentional. The goal for the annual report associated with the current strategic plan is that they appear as sister publications. They essentially look like they are part of a family. This will help to create a bond between the different documents and demonstrate how they are supportive of one another. Looking a little deeper into the structure of the 2020 annual report, you can see sections are similar to that of last year's. This helps ensure consistency in what the public views. Sections are listed here on the slide and include an introduction, organizational overview, facility details, corporate communications, human resources, operational services, operational support, investigative services, records and information management services, executive services, community safety and well-being, and as previously mentioned, the report will conclude by looking forward with a reference to the current strategic plan. Now, something you may have noticed as we went through the different sections of the report is this large yellow circle. This is a QR code, and it will be located throughout the report to direct readers to explore a new, interactive online version of the 2020 annual report. While it is common to have a link that directs the audience to an online PDF copy of the annual report or an interactive flipbook, we would like to do more. With 2020 marking the first full year of our strategic plan, this is an optimal time to try something new. We are taking the 2020 annual report and making it a truly immersive online experience for public audiences. The annual report is essentially its own website where viewers can scroll through one digital page and interact with images and videos. They can experience this report come to life. To help further illustrate this, we have prepared a short 2-minute video clip. As you can see in the video, the online piece mirrors elements of the annual report. They're interactive, so if someone wants to learn more about the chair or chief's message, they simply click and it appears. As you scroll down the page, you see a series of icons, and these are navigation tools. A viewer can click on an icon and they will be taken to a page section they want to learn more about. Again, as we look at the organizational chart, you can see the sections are interactive with drop downs and images that can be clicked on to make larger. We can also embed videos, such as this one here from a recent board meeting. Looking at this section here regarding the facility, there is a slideshow that viewers can look through to really experience some of the different services and areas of our new facility. Again, here you can see the audience can explore the content. Finally, we have a sample of the social media section, which shows counters and brings the page to life. It also offers direct links to our social media channels and areas of the Barrie Police Service website. Placing the annual report in this digital environment will also let the service make live updates and help direct online audiences to specific resources and information. There will also be a link in the interactive site that directs readers to the full print copy of the annual report if they wish to view it as well. This year's design serves as a template for both the traditional print and digital formats and can be additionally strengthened for future years. This will help increase our engagement, our two-way communication, and accountability with the local community. We want the public to explore and understand the different roles and functions of the Barrie Police Service. Building on this, we are also in the process of creating an interactive strategic plan. The digital component is a supplement to the traditionally printed annual report and helps guide the community to know how the Barrie Police Service works to enhance our community by providing professional, accountable, and sustainable police services. This concludes our sneak peek to the annual report, and we wish to thank you for your time.
Well, I'll reserve my comments. Any questions from the board to the team? Mr. Khan, then Ms. Strawn.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and Staff Sergeant Richter, thank you very much. That's great. Really appreciate the effort that you're putting in there and the opportunity to use, well, one, a period of time where we're obviously less connected in some means than in previous, and you've provided an opportunity for us to sort of mitigate that and in fact enhance that connectivity. So thank you very much for that. I have one question, and that is, I don't know if I can see a page number, but you showed about the a slide where it's the 2020 to 2022 strategic plan design influenced by, and calling it a sister publication. My question just is, in there you show some graphs and percentages, and I couldn't zoom in enough. I recognize some of it would be sort of referencing sort of resources or whatever that may be. I was curious though, is any of it, when you look at sort of an annual report as a snapshot of a period of time within a larger strategic plan window, I'm just curious if any of that is sort of like a progress bar towards achieving goals that were set out at the onset of the strategic plan. Is there anything in terms of how we're progressing towards achieving the goals that were laid out in the initial plan?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Khan, for your question. Yes, you'll see the when we present the stats. Hopefully, I'm not giving feedback here. When we present the stats in regards to that, we also do a comparative year over year. So it is somewhat of a progress report. We also tie in many of the initiatives to the strategic plan, the objectives, and the priorities for that. So we view this as the annual annual report as one within the strategic plan, reporting on that year and going forward, but also comparing it to where we've come from.
Thanks, Inspector. Just a final note, I really appreciate the effort that has been put forth and the initiative that you've taken. So thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Strawn, I think you're up next.
Yeah, and I don't have any questions. I just wanted to congratulate the team on the dynamic report. I think it's great to see something that has options for interaction, and it's not something I would have thought of, and I think it's great to be able to engage the community that way. So fantastic job.
Seeing, yeah, my comments as well. Thinking outside the box, looking for. I mean, the key to producing any report is getting people to review it. And there's no sense producing a report if no one's ever going to look at it. So I think what you've done in this 2020 report is provided more opportunity for more people to see the report. So I do have one question, and maybe we can follow up offline, but the rollout of the report, do we plan to direct people to get them to review the report? Is there sort of a plan to do that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that. There will be and I hope everyone can hear me. Sorry, my screen is glitching. Thank you very much. There will be a corporate communications involvement and roll out an announcement in regard to that. So we're quite excited to follow up actually on Ms. Strawn's comments in regards to the online content. Really where directing people online to access the report in an interactive fashion. So as you can see within the report, there was all the social media platforms and the counters and that. So there will be a corporate communications strategic information plan when we do roll this out. And I would defer to Chief Greenwood or Deputy Allen in regards to any comments in regard how you see it rolling out. We've done it in the past, but we think with the further interactive options that will have a much broader audience. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I can see the excitement from members of our service and the development of our new way in which we communicate our annual report and members of the board's enthusiasm around it. And we will continue with that excitement, enthusiasm with a communication strategy that will utilize all forms of our traditional and social media to bring people together to review this document or view the document, sorry.
Thanks, Chief. Just to conclude then, Inspector Burke, Staff Sergeant Richter, Victoria, Jeanette, what a great job. You spent 7 or 8 minutes presenting something that probably took, I don't know how many hours, hundreds of hours into we want to recognize you for your efforts. It's clear from the board that we're excited about the movement of the report and where it's going. So thank you very much for all the hard work. Appreciate it very much. Body-worn camera pilot project, Chief. I believe if you can introduce Staff Sergeant Goodbrand, who we've heard from before a number of times. Is he on board?
He is. Staff Sergeant Goodbrand has joined us remotely, as has Inspector Burke. He is available to respond to questions, but we do have a presentation. I'll pass it over to you, Staff.
I think Inspector Burke was going to have a quick intro. No,
I was just bringing you on stage. So without further ado,
right.
I know the board has heard from Staff Sergeant Goodbrand a number of times on this project. A lot of interest both within the service, from the board, and from the public. So without further ado, our resident expert, and really Staff Sergeant Goodbrand is referred to across the province as a resource. So we're quite fortunate to have him on board guiding this project. So Dave, over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen, and it's going to be blank for a second while I get the presentation up and going. I'm hoping you all see the actual presentation and not the notes. Am I good on that?
Looks
Okay,
great.
perfect.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Good morning to all the board members, Chair, Chief Greenwood. Thank you for letting me and all the senior staff and leadership team of Barrie Police Service for, number one, allowing me to be part of these great projects that we've been working on with Barrie Police to be one of the most innovative police services, in my opinion, across the province with technology. Without all your support, we wouldn't be where we are today. So after conducting a very successful pilot, it's my pleasure to present our body-worn camera pilot project from our pilot and do a quick overview of where we're at. Now, as you're all aware, I've been involved with the technology around the body-worn camera pilot, body-worn cameras and DEMS, which is Digital Evidence Management System, for almost 4 years now, and actively engaged in the province and helping other agencies get established based on our experience over the last 4 years. So you have, as indicated by the chair, you have heard 2 other presentations. This is our third, and this will go over basically sum up what we've done in our pilot and where we're moving from all of the information that was collected and analyzed by ourselves, myself and the team on the best practices that we think moving forward. So we do quickly just want to talk about the hardware choice. We did only test the Axon body-worn camera AB3 because we are a current Axon customer. We have Axon involved with evidence.com. We have interview solutions through Axon, and we also manage all of our tasers in the DEMS platform. So it was the most seamless, integration, not to mention the best technology in the field. When we began our presentations back last year, the big thing that we wanted to lay out was our project pillars. And when we look at our project pillars, to sum that up is basically we wanted to look at our transparency and trust in the public, better civility, which would in essence lead to less use of force incidents if people act better with us because they know they're being recorded. Excuse me. Complaint resolutions, that having this body-worn video will allow us to resolve complaints quicker and get the best evidence, as well as the training benefits that we would gain from having body-worn cameras. Our project timelines began back in 2016 with basically setting up the foundation for body-worn cameras. We knew that, and we see it across the province, many agencies are trying to go to body-worn cameras first, but you need to lay the foundation and build from the bottom up, not the top down. And that's exactly what we did. And as you can see by this slide, it's been a long project. We've also received project evaluations from the officers, and we anticipate that we will start this implementation in June when we receive the hardware. Basically, the way it's going to work from Axon is that once our contract is signed and submitted, we will receive the hardware within 3 to 4 weeks. So we anticipate we could commence our training late June into July and through into September, worst case scenario into October to get that. Now, as you're aware, 150 officers will be outfitted. That includes all frontline personnel, platoons, crew members, traffic unit officers, tactical support officers, and our community service constables that are engaged in enforcement. When we look at our evaluation, the big thing there was we evaluated a lot of things during our pilot because we wanted to make sure we had the most robust 360 view of what was good, what we could learn from, et cetera. The big thing was evaluating our community interactions with the body-worn cameras and really relating that to the pillars and civility towards us and quicker resolutions to our complaints, and did it reduce use of force. Now, the challenge even worldwide with use of force is the civility piece. It's hard to determine exactly if how much your use of force was impacted, because what may have been a use of force encounter without the body-worn camera, it prevented the person from maybe being aggressive towards us because they saw the camera rolling. So it's hard to measure that, but we are confident through the feedback from the officers that they did feel as though people were calmer with them when they knew that they were being recorded, which in our opinion would have reduced use of force interactions. Now getting into the contract, this is the probably the meat potatoes of what everybody wants to know, and that is what's the cost. So with our Axon Body 3 camera, we're getting 150 of them, and to really, instead of going through this whole chart, I just want to highlight a couple critical things. Number one is that our year one cost will be $140,499 or $140,499 for the year of 2021. Moving forward from year 2 to 10 will be $171,941 to operate 150 cameras, for a grand total over the 9 years of $1,516,031. Now, the big thing here is we are receiving an amazing discount from Axon of almost $240,000 because we're an early innovator. We've worked with the company on helping develop some of their processes that work for all of our partners in the policing agency worldwide. So we're recognized by Axon, and they've really extended that with an amazing discount. So the last thing too that I really need to point out is that because the Axon 2 the Axon Body 3 camera works as we've talked about these 2 features, additional add-ons, the signal devices, and you've heard this in past presentations, they allow the officers to focus on their interaction in a high-stress environment. So when they power on their taser, it'll signal the camera to start recording. If they turn on their cruiser lights, it'll signal their camera to start recording. And if they draw their firearm, it'll signal their body camera. They're critical pieces because in a high-stress situation, an officer will not probably even think about pushing their camera, but dealing with the situation at hand, and then potentially not record. So when we look at that, the current platform that we're on with tasers is an X2. It does not have an internal chip that will do that. So we have to add 175, they're called SPPMs, but they're the battery, and that is what sends the signal out to the body-worn camera. So being that we have 175 Taser X2s in our stock right now, we'll need to outfit all of those as well. It's not included in this contract, but it's $26,000 or $13, roughly $26,000 extra. But this will be covered in our training budget. They do have money set aside, the training unit, and we're looking at getting the money to get these SPPMs or batteries into our X2s. The other thing that I just quickly want to talk about is the reaction assistant. It's a critical piece. It saves 50 to 70% of our personnel's time in redacting any video. Now, we do know that with all of this body-worn camera footage, 40% of it roughly will probably end up in our courts as disclosure. All of that has to be redacted. Personal information, faces, et cetera, of people that are not involved. So this particular piece is critical because it really takes away 50 to 70% of the work by doing an automated process of helping redact things within the video. And I just talked about that. I jumped ahead, sorry, about the additional costs of the $26,000 for the X2s. And it is not an annual cost. It's going to come from our training unit, and it is based on usage. Now, moving forward into our project highlights, what we learned from our pilot and where we want to be in the coming weeks and months is definitely get our contract signed, which will include redaction assistant, signal for Taser, sidearms in our cruisers. Being 30 cruisers, the majority of all the frontline, including our traffic unit as well. And then looking at training, we need to get these people trained now. The training is roughly 3 hours per officer. We are going to conduct it myself. I'm going to conduct it so it's a streamlined approach and consistent platform for the curriculum being delivered to platoons when officers are available. So at the start of their shift, we will hold back a certain amount of officers and train them so others can get out on the road, and we'll cycle through that over the coming months. And then the last thing that I want to point out from the project highlight is the personnel. So we're running a case management unit as a pilot. Based on what we know going through this pilot, it's a critical piece moving forward. The amount of work to marry up all of the digital evidence with the scope or with the e-brief file that goes to the court and ensure that all of the information leaving the station is consistent and consistent received at the court, that all of this digital evidence is married up with the actual e-brief. And as it's currently standing, we have 1 sergeant, 2 constables, and 4 civilian members, including a special constable, that are working in that case management unit that are doing a phenomenal job at streamlining the work that's going out, not to mention ensuring that the digital evidence is managed accordingly. So there is a lot that will have to be massaged in coming months and into next year, because processes like our digital evidence management system change kind of. It's like a living document. I mean, what we do today will change a bit tomorrow because of requests from the courts. Now, the big thing is we have not had a lot of body-worn camera go into trial yet from our pilot. So we'll get a better idea over the coming months how that will impact it. But when we look worldwide, what we do see is when there's body-worn camera footage of situations, guilty pleas tend to rise, which means less cost in court, which means less overtime. So we hope that we will start to see and reap those benefits from the use of body-worn camera video that we capture, not to mention the transparency it'll create in our community and the trust it will create, and also resolve complaints faster and contribute towards better civility towards our officers and also towards the public. I hope I've covered everything in this presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them and fire away. Yeah, absolutely. Eric.
Mr. Khan, yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Wow, Staff Sergeant, I love your enthusiasm. I can tell that you're enthusiastic about this, and I appreciate it. And you're obviously your apparent learned expertise in the subject matter. So congratulations to that. I'm sure it's been an amazing project to work on. You touched on it towards the end, and just a question, not that you've been bored and had lots of time on your hand, but that cost benefit that you talked about. You did quantify in form of a graph or a chart sort of the expenditure and the slight increase, with regard to that, I don't know if you called it signal or whatever, that the pairing of But I was curious if we actually have a comparison on or a projection on those savings that you anticipate with the, likely more settlements or non-disputing of charges and essentially the greater compliance. Is there a way to sort of address that? And I don't know if the mayor's speaking to that with the hand or no. Okay, sorry. So yeah, do you have any idea of what that might look like?
Well, at this point, we don't. It's such a, it's a dynamic situation because we really don't know at this point how it'll unroll in court. But we do know that when we look worldwide, from Australia to Britain and even the US, who've been actively using body-worn cameras over the last decade, that there is guilty pleas definitely increase. So that there's cost savings. Now, when I'm talking about the extra cost of, and I don't know if you're referring to the SPPM, the battery.
Yes, that's one.
Yeah. That, unfortunately, it's a critical piece. Unfortunately, now in the coming years, Taser has introduced, which is called Taser 7. It's going to eventually replace Taser 2. Now it will have it built into it, but unfortunately, it's a large, that's going to be a large cost replacement. So the most efficient and most cost affordable way to get us there is to add these batteries to our next twos. And fortunately, the training unit does have budget set aside every year, Taser management, and we'll be drawing from that budget. So it won't add to this actual, that's why it wasn't included in the chart.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of cost savings across the board from also from the redaction assistant, because we know it's going to cut the work of our redaction team in half, which it means dollars because it's less person hours.
I did note the line item not being there in terms of no additional costs to the service. So I did note that, and I appreciate that. I think it's an expense that speaks for itself, obviously, in terms of safety of the officer and getting the information. So I think it speaks for itself. The only other question I had was regard to future objectives. What do you see as an evolution of this in terms of further integrations that you might have with other platforms or software? I think we touched on it. Don't want to get too much into it around transcription for safety of officers and note taking. And then the other point I had was, are you documenting this in any your rollout or your training in terms of creating a system, for future use of training officers who are not part of this initial 150, but next year and the year after, are we creating a system?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. We saw that when I was in risk management. There's certain initiatives we brought forward and I trained the service, but there comes a point where we have to hand that off. I can't always be there to train people. Right. So what we do is after I get the initial people trained, and then perhaps the next wave, I will bring in our training unit cadre, and they will, I think it's Mark Levicki will end up being the one, but I'm not going to speak out of turn, but he's become kind of their body-worn camera tester right now. They're testing it in their environment. But the idea would be to get everybody train our initial recruits coming back, and then slowly integrate the training unit to take this forward so that every year that curriculum is delivered to new hires or people returning back to work from extended leave.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor Lehman, then Ms. Strawn.
Thanks very much. And actually, RF asked one of the questions I was going to ask. The other one I had, Dave, and thank you so much for the presentation. I'm wondering if you could just give the board a bit more color or detail on the experience of the pilot project. I noted in reading the report there was good description of the process, not as much in terms of what we felt the impacts were. And maybe you could just give a little bit of description of the experience of the service with the pilot.
Well, I think generally I'll go into what the officers, first I'll talk about the pilot officers. Number one, the general feedback from them verbally to me was that they loved the cameras. They did not want to lose the cameras after the pilot was concluded. The majority definitely can't wait to get the cameras back. So that they definitely felt as though they were treated differently in the public. So their general feedback. Now we utilized Dr. Victoria Sitzma from Queen's University to conduct external surveys in the public and for officers. They were generally, I mean, they were honest about some things, like obviously workload increases. Now, you got, from my perspective, when an officer says their workload increases, what happens is when they go out and record something, they've got to basically they've got to indicate what needs to be redacted for our redaction team, because they know what needs to be. There's tools within the camera that will really be specified in the training to focus on using those tools to speed the redaction process. So they think, well, I got to come back in and fill out this report now and mark all the redaction times. But what they're forgetting is that it offsets, because what they're capturing in their body worn camera now. I'm not saying that they don't have to complete thorough notes, but what I would have had to done in the past, and I know you're all laughing because you're thinking, when were you actually last on the road doing police work? But you would have to paint a picture in your notes of what you were going through, what you were seeing. Well, the body worn camera is going to capture that for you. So the majority, you're going to save times, and what is, and as you heard from a presentation in the past, is a huge amount of our officers' time is writing notes in their daily interaction. So that is a big thing. The other thing that we learned in the pilot was the critical piece of that case management unit, or a unit at a minimum that will basically manage all the digital evidence. We're talking a huge amount of digital evidence that's going to come out of here. Now, with 25 officers, we had well over 2,000 videos in a 4-month period captured. And that is not probably a high end, because people were learning to use it. There's many times they probably forgot to turn it on at calls, things like that. But as we move into the rollout, we're going from 25 officers to 150. So one thing we're learning is that we're going to have to be prepared, and and there is going to be some adjustment period, and there is going to be, as we're going to have to say to our case management team, some patience and moving through this. The other thing that we learned is our partners in the Crown Attorney's Office are not excited about this project, in the sense that they think it's going to create a lot more work for them. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I understand where they're coming from. Sometimes you got to put yourself in another person's shoes. But as much as the evidence piece is a big part of this, the real true piece of putting these body-worn cameras, in my opinion, on is to create transparency and trust in our community, and to protect our officers from false allegations. And then the evidence follows in that as another benefit from it. So I could go on for hours about what we've learned in this pilot and things that we're still going to need to learn as we roll it out. And there will be growing pains and adjustments and tweaks to how we do things in the coming, I would even say, a year to 18 months. So, but I am confident that we are an early innovator that has really set a good foundation for a great program. And there will be hiccups, but we will, in essence, we have a lot of other police agencies in the province turning to us for advice, which is a great thing, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did, and thanks for that. And I'm sure there's a lot more that you could say. I guess I'll ask one quick follow-up, Mr. Chair, which is a Rich Johnson type question. We had a pilot program here with an experimental group. If we compare the experimental group's experience, those 2,000 videos, versus a control group handling of a similar incident, did we compare one against the next, where we'd say, okay, in the pilot, here was the experience with an assault with the body-worn camera, how it went, and here's the experience with the traditional, so we could do a bit of a side-by-side. And even if it's not something that lends itself to numerical data, I don't know, maybe hours spent on something, but more the narrative to say, control group, traditional way, here's how it went, body-worn camera, similar incident, here's how it went, this is what was better, and this was maybe what was an area for concern.
Yeah, in essence, it was probably done every day when we looked at how the body-worn cameras worked and integrated into our current process. But I'll give you a great example where body-worn camera versus no body-worn camera right from the start. Week 2, one of our officers was involved with an individual that had, we got a call of an individual that was passed out on the sidewalk. When we arrived, officers arrived on scene and immediately engaged their cameras, as they were trained to do. As they're approaching the male, they noticed that he's got a cut on the back of his head, a large cut, probably from falling. When they start speaking to him, he is extremely intoxicated by drug. He ended up being taken to the hospital, and I think he ate numerous bags of edibles. And it's quite a video. And the officer actually sent us the video to all of us, to our team, saying, "I'm so happy I had my body-worn camera," because in the end, what happens is the guy gets up, they're trying to calm him down. He goes to run from them, and the officer sweeps his feet so he doesn't run away, and he wipes out and rolls across the ground. and then, they take him into custody. It's very well done. If there wasn't body worn camera in that, he could have made an allegation that the officer caused the injury to his head. But it's very documented from the minute they arrived, not only them speaking about the injury to his head, the cut on his head, looking at it, but you actually see it in the video. So, I mean, that's just an example of where we could say body worn camera to no body worn camera. And also it was very late at night, no witnesses. Could we have been still dealing with it in our PSP branch right now as, misconduct by our officer tripping this guy and him hitting his head? So I think that's just a quick example, but yes, there is many other points where we've looked at, if we didn't have the body worn camera, how would it have conducted itself? And that one thing is notes. I mean, now I know that if I stop a vehicle and the person's impaired, in the past, we would have had to make notes of slurred speech, bloodshot, glassy eyes, unsteady on their feet, and you've got to articulate that in court. Well, when I get out of my cruiser now and approach that person, you hear their slurred speech, you see them staggering. There's no describing this, and there's nothing better than the judge or even the defense counsel before it gets to trial seeing that, saying, I don't know if we should go to trial on this. It's a lot better than trying to scrutinize our notes. So I think that's two quick examples that I hope answered your question.
I did. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sergeant.
Ms. Strawn, then Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, and just following up on Mayor Lehman's comments and questions, we talked a little bit about the pilot and the evaluation that was done, and I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about ongoing evaluation, what kind of tools you'll use, how you'll measure success, and how you'll determine when changes need to be made.
Well, so the tools we'll use moving forward, well, we will definitely have officers continue to provide feedback. And I think that'll be a critical piece. We've developed a smart sheet that officers can hit a link and basically provide daily feedback. I want that information, like how's your battery lasting, any issues that you have. The other thing is our case management team is critical in helping us really tackle issues that come from not only e-briefs, but from digital evidence. They've created, through the assistance of our IT branch, we've created basically a evaluation tool. So every time they process a brief and digital evidence, they mark inconsistencies and things that need to be, corrected. So we will utilize that as well to have them provide input back on what inconsistencies you're seeing related to body worn camera, so we can, basically deal with it quickly and abruptly and make sure the officers don't get into bad habits. And those will be the big things, is getting that continual feedback, just like with the DEMS project when we enrolled it, getting the officers' feedback is a big thing because they're the users. In the end, we give them the tools and they use it. And then the other thing that I think is a big piece is the continual dialogue between us and our external stakeholders, including the provincial crown, the federal crown, and our POA court prosecutors. It's critical, and that continual basically dialogue back and forth is going to be critical, and it's going to be probably a good, like I said, 12 to 18 months of adjustment, and it's going to take a bit for us to really find the best practices in our environment, because what works in Toronto may not work in Barrie and vice versa. I hope that answered what we'll be doing.
That it does, yes. And just one follow-up to that is there any way to evaluate and measure cost savings for the organization? Like, I know we've talked about how time is saved and different operational things that will help save costs down the road, but can we measure that?
I think it can be measured in some ways. Definitely when we look at cost savings, I mean, if you look at, if we can try to talk to the officers about with their feedback over the next 6 months, did it eliminate their notes? Did they spend less time involved overall? We could probably look at how we can measure the amount of time they're doing certain tasks and see if it's different. It's a tough one when you don't have a baseline to start with. I mean, we do, but we've never really measured. I mean, we could definitely look at different ways. I don't have a quick answer for you but it's definitely something I will do some brainstorming and see if there's a good way to measure that.
Okay, thank you. And just my last question is, how does the body-worn camera relate to young offenders?
So young offenders, everything is going to apply the same as any other young offender record. So if it goes before the court, we will do the redaction piece and basically as per what is expected with the YCGA. And also keep in mind with freedom of information requests, anything that's before the court, we would definitely is not going to be released. But at the end, we have to basically follow whatever is within the YCGA and the rules around disclosure of evidence, and keeping in mind whether it was a video from prior to body-worn cameras, if it was CCTV footage, we will deal with it the same way. If video is video. So it's just a different medium of video that we're going to be providing the court.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I think this is a great step for our service and the public. Some of the concern you hear from the public is officers don't turn on the camera and stuff. Will there be an override, or will the cameras come on automatic when they exit the vehicle, or sirens or something come on? And obviously when we implement it in a full, will there be a document of disciplinary actions if they choose not, or if they forget to put on their camera, or is that something? It's just, this is the concern you hear from members of the public. Oh, they'll forget to turn it on when it's convenient and stuff. So maybe you could just speak to that.
Yeah, so I spoke in regards to, and I maybe skimmed over it. We're going to be basically using what's called signal in the sidearm, taser, and lights on our cruisers emergency activation. It will trigger the camera automatically, not just the officer's camera, but any camera within a vicinity of that signal. So if I draw my taser and cycle it on, any camera within about 100 feet around me will turn on as well. So you'll get every camera turning on. The same with a cruiser. If I turn on my cruiser lights and there's a cruiser immediately behind me, it's most likely going to turn on that officer's camera as well. Now that signal goes out for about 30 seconds. So if I arrive after the 30 seconds as a backup, I'm going to have to activate my camera on my own. Now, what our procedure is very explicit in saying is you must activate your body-worn camera during all investigative interactions. So I would have to say that when we analyze it, and we'll be doing spot audits as we roll this out on particular, pick some officers, if they went to 10 radio calls a day, there should be 10 videos a day. And if we or I see that, then it's up to our senior management and our leadership team to make a decision on how we're going to move forward with disciplinary action. Or, I mean, right off the bat, I would have to say maybe it's education. It's also teaching our officers in the early months how to get used to this, because we have to understand it's a whole new muscle memory to arrive on scene now and push a button on your chest. So it's going to take a little bit. So we have to be patient with the officers too. But a year down the road, if the same officer is forgetting to turn on their camera every call, then we have to deal with that, in my opinion. So we will be analyzing that. But generally speaking, the signal device will eliminate that in high stress situations and vehicle stops. But it is up to the officer to basically turn on their camera with all investigative interactions. We have to do it that way because number one, you got to consider battery life. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that say it should just run your whole shift. We have to consider our officers' privacy when they're not on calls. But there's no battery in the market that would run 12 to 14 hours straight. But we do also know that when we go to public settings and do an interview, if somebody's not comfortable with us recording, we have to turn off our device at their request. So we do have to have that functionality to allow the officers to have the discretion, but they have to follow the procedure. I hope that is what you're looking for.
Yeah, it was actually perfect. I don't have any follow-ups. Like I said, I think this is exciting for both the service and the public, and I appreciate all your work and your passion for it as well. It shows.
Thank you.
Sorry, Arif, we're going to have to cut this off and go offline. We're well past our budgeted time here, so I'm sure Sergeant Goodbrand will allow follow-up after the meeting.
Absolutely.
So I'll just conclude by thanking you, Staff Sergeant Goodbrand. It's clear by the involvement from the board that this is something that's very important to us and something that we do consider to be conventional police work. And I know from conversations with Chief Greenwood and Inspector Burke that your leadership on this project has been exceptional. And I also know that other services outside the Barrie Police Service come to you for your comment and expertise. So on behalf of the board, thank you very much for your work. And we look forward to hearing back from you, I assume, in the fall as to getting closer to the conclusion of the project. So thank you, everyone. And we'll move on to our consent agenda.
Thank you.
Items 10 and 11 are in the consent, staff acknowledgements and public complaints. Are any of those items that the board would like pulled? Or questions? Seeing none, a motion to receive the consent agenda items. Mr. Khan?
I'll second it, Chair.
Councillor Thompson, those in favor? Seeing none opposed. There are two annual reports included in our package today. Use of force and public complaints. Chief, can I throw that over to you to just provide us a brief high-level summary of the two annual reports in our package?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll speak briefly to the Public Complaints Annual Report for the year 2020. As the board is aware, the Ontario Police Services Act mandates that all police services boards oversee the complaint system under Part 5 of the Police Services Act, and Ontario Regulations 399 of the Act requires that the chief prepare an annual report to the board, and this is the report, and we're meeting our requirements under the legislation and the regulation. This information provided in this report, though, is a culmination of board reports specific to public complaints and special investigation unit investigations. So the information is not new to the board other than it is in an annual format. Reminding the board, in 2009, the OIPRD was established as an independent, neutral, and arm's length agency that reported to the Attorney General. So all public complaints are filtered through this agency on behalf of policing across the province. The OIPRD is also, as of this or 2020, to report on the Anti-Racism Act and are to collect personal information identifying Indigenous identity, race, religion, and other ethnic origin for members of the public when a complaint is made. But public complaints are broken down into three areas. Policy complaints, which is the rules and standards of a police service that guide how an officer delivers the police service. We have service complaints in regards to how efficiently and effectively we perform the duties that are required of us. And then we have conduct complaints that are the behavior of our police officers. So for last year in 2020, we did not receive any complaints in regards to our policies. We did receive one service complaint that was resolved through informal resolution. All of our conduct complaints can be resolved in different formats. We have the ability to resolve them through customer service resolution, early resolution program, enhanced media or mediation program, local resolution. Some are withdrawn. We also have our informal resolution, and we also have investigations. I will point out, of the investigations that we did conducted, there were 18 public complaints that required a complex and full investigation, and 15 of those were deemed unsubstantiated, and 3 of the complaints were determined to be substantiated and of a less serious in nature. There was one OIPRD investigation that was retained by the agency, and at the conclusion of their investigation, it was deemed that there were no reasonable grounds to believe that misconduct had occurred, so it was classified as unsubstantiated, and the file was concluded. If you look at the public complaints that we did receive. Of those, there were 70 of them. Of those, 38 were deemed to be, and the classification is part of the Act. So they were deemed to be frivolous, vexatious, or not in the public interest. And therefore, they were actually screened out by the OAPRD and not accepted. Of the remaining 32 of the public complaints, they were identified as allegations in regards to discreditable conduct, unlawful exercise of authority, or neglect of duty. And we have charts to indicate that in the report provided to you. When we look at the public complaints and we look at what is happening across the province and how it can be compared to the Barrie Police Service, I can say that we are consistent with what we're seeing. So because of the pressures out in the community and the people's knowledge that they can provide complaints to the OIPRD or complain about the policy, conduct, or services, we have seen an increase across the province, as we have seen an increase with the Barrie Police Service of public complaints. But what we have also seen with the increase in the public complaints being received at the OIPRD, we've seen an increase of those that were not accepted, and that is consistent. The last part of the report specifically addresses Special Investigations Unit Act investigations. And I just wanted to bring once again to the board's attention, back in December of last year, there were changes made to the Police Services Act, and we now have a specific section on Special Investigation Units. And there has been some changes to the Act that specifically would impact all police services across the province. And they have changed things such as the term officer is now official. SIU now investigates incidents where any officer or official discharges a firearm at a person, whether or not that person dies or is seriously injured. The definition of serious injury is now codified in the legislation, and sexual assault now have an independent category, and we have now a clear definition of what is on duty and off duty. And where we have seen significant change that has impacted services and impacted officers, and we're pleased to report that the investigations are required to be completed in 120 days, or there is a report every 30 days to notify the service, the board, and the officers why that has extended. And so those are some of the highlights. Specific to the Barrie Police Service, there were 8 occurrences reported in 2020. 4 of them were concluded with the SIU determining that there was no grounds and evidence to proceed with criminal charges. And the other 4 were terminated as they found that the police interaction had nothing to do with the individuals that the subject had. And that really is an overview of the public complaints reports. Are there any questions from the board?
Questions from the board for the chief? Seeing none. Well, thanks, Chief, for an excellent summarization of those 2 reports, lengthy reports, but an excellent summarization. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Next item is the community safety and well-being plan. I believe, as the board is aware, it was finalized recently. We saw it, I think, last month. And just to advise that it has went to general committee last Monday and was approved, and going to council, I believe it's next Monday or the Monday after, for final approval. So the community safety and well-being plan will be finalized. I think we're all aware that a significant portion of that plan relates to the Barrie Police Service, and the execution of that plan, a significant portion, also falls upon the Barrie Police Service. So there will be requirements of our service to execute that plan. So just for to advise the board that it has been finalized and just about final approval at council. And to conclude, as I have as a member of the subcommittee, our police service was I'd be underestimating to say we were significant. I don't think the plan would have got to where it is without the contributions of the chief and Staff Sergeant Gates. We were real leaders in this, and so I congratulate you, Chief, and your team on your leadership to get this plan to council and to get it finalized. And then obviously we look forward to the execution of the plan over the coming years. So thanks, Chief, to you and your team. And I'll throw it back to you, Chief, for your update. If you could give us an update on some key occurrences recently.
Thank you very much, Chair. There was also the use of force annual report as one of the items on the agenda. I can speak to that just to provide an overview if members of the board would like to hear that.
Sorry about that, Chief.
Okay, thank you very much. When we speak to the annual 2020 annual report, police services are governed by the Act and Ontario Regulations 926 in regards to use of force. And there is a requirement on us to submit a use of force report when any member of our service uses force in situations where a firearm is drawn in the presence of the member of the public, a firearm is pointed at any person, a firearm is discharged, or a weapon other than a firearm, including a weapon of opportunity, is used on another person, or our conducted energy weapons is pointed at a subject to gain compliance. And lastly, physical force is used on a person resulting in an injury requiring medical attention. Members of the Barrie Police Service, with our procedures, we have added an additional piece to that where members who use a CAW as a CEW, conducted energy weapon, as a demonstrated force. So that means there's an overt display of a CEW with the intent to achieve compliance. So when we look at our reports in 2020, there were 129 reports filed involving 94 incidences or subjects. The two things that I'd like to draw the board's attention to are some changes in regards to what occurred in 2020. As you were aware, and we are still managing through the COVID-19 pandemic, there were changes made under the state of emergency, under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, which impacted some new development of regulations. The Barrie Police Service was able to work within the legislative requirements of our use of force training and met our obligations under the Police Services Act based on the direction from the ministry and the new regulations. Additionally, the police services across the province, with the introduction of the Anti-Racism Act in 2017, effective January 1st of 2020, we were, as a public sector organization, required to collect participant observer information regarding the race of individuals in respect to how we report on the use of force reports. So the Ontario anti-racism data was established to help identify and monitor specific racism and racial disparities within the public sector. The data standards were to ensure that there was consistency, effective practices by producing reliable information to support evidence-based decision-making and to help eliminate any systemic racism or promote racial equity. So there have been amendments to the use of force and our regulations 926, and effective last year, we commenced the revised use of force reporting, and we had to fill out mandatory fields in regards to the regulations. So officers are now required to complete a use of force report. It is reviewed by designated personnel within our organization and reviewed by our use of force analyst. And we are now required to submit information to the ministry, specifically in regards to Section 40 of the data standards. So we are now collecting race information based on individuals or officers' perception of a race of an individual, and the categories are Black, East and Southeast Asian, Indigenous, Latino, Middle Eastern, South Asian, and white. And these race categories are commonly used as social descriptors in Ontario. They're not based on science or biology, but are based on the differences that society has created. So it is the service provider, or in our case, our officer's perception of another person's race, and it's based on what the officer observes. So it can be skin color, it can be hair texture, facial features, and other information that can be used to inform assumptions about a officer's background. So the best assessment by our officers is done honestly and in good faith, and they record the perception of the race in the use of force reports. And this is now mandatory. To ensure that our members were prepared for this, for their reporting in 2020, our training unit did provide training to this effect. Our regular in-service training includes use of force training, where our authorities come from, what our procedures are, reviewing of the use of force model, specifically focusing in on de-escalation techniques, looking at the situation. What does the officer perceive the subject behavior to be? And then what is the effective use of force option available to them in the circumstances? So that is an overview of our use of force report. Are there any questions from the board?
Any questions for the chief? Mr. Khan?
Thank you, Chief. Much appreciated. A question for you more around how the service is obviously training its members, and how I guess where public education comes into play. It's not so long ago that I think we all recall that the term profiling or carding or whatever it was played a significant role in terms of public outcry and how legislation or policy was changed. So that we're not confused, and so that the public is not confused. Obviously, now it is legislated that officers have the ability are to collect data for the right purpose, for this purpose that is explained and outlined. And I'm curious, is there a gray area? Is there confusion, or is there an opportunity in which we should be looking at in terms of communicating how the service will be interacting with the public and engaging, and just to make sure that there is no misperception potential by the public?
The provincial government has done some education and awareness generally in regards to the data standards and expectations under the Anti-Racism Act. Specific to the Barrie Police Service, we have educated our members. We have not received any concerns specifically from the public in regards to this. We would make sure that we would respond to those inquiries and do the education to members of our community.
Any other questions for the chief? Well, thank you for that report, Chief, and you're still on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda that I will speak to is in regards to the chief's update, and I will just ask if Sarah could please share the screen.
Hi,
Oh,
Chief.
Tony,
It's Sergeant
Tony,
Kelly
okay,
here.
Tony, if you could share the screen, please.
Yes, I was attempting. Just give me one quick second. I'm just going to stop sharing and try that again.
Okay, I will commence speaking just in interest of time for the board members and the community. The first slide would illustrate an update in regards to COVID-19. And I can indicate that our calls for service are for the last month, even though we were facing a stay-at-home order, are consistent with what we saw or what we have experienced in the last 4 years. We continue as a service to support the OPP and Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit in regards to the vaccine delivery response. In regards to the Quarantine Act charges and visits, we still continue to conduct our level 1 visits, and I'm pleased to report that everybody is in compliance when we do these checks. We are following up on one matter, but I think that should be resolved shortly. We have the G4S that are conducting level 2 and level 3 designation checks for those that are returning to our country and are under regulations to remain at home. As the board is aware, there has been, and there were numerous demonstrations since March of this year into May of this year. And we still engage in education awareness, and we have done a social media campaign encouraging people to follow the public health guidelines, comply with the stay-at-home orders. We were still seeing individuals that were not doing that, and we have laid charges under the criminal code, part 3 of the provincial offense notices, and also our regular PONs. From a member wellness, I'm happy to report that with the support of the province, we have had 98% of our members have received the first dose for the COVID-19 vaccine. And with the changes in the criteria, we will now start to see members of our service receive their second dose. Am reporting that there was a community outbreak. Members of our service attended a call for service and engaged with members of the community that had tested positive for COVID, and it has, we have seen a positive result for our member, and we have a number of officers that are self-isolating as a result of that call for service. I know you don't have anything on your screen, so I will go through this quickly. There is a snapshot of our calls for service that we responded to and the telephone calls that we received as an organization. So for the month of April, there were just over 58 calls for service that were computer-aided dispatch. Our telephone calls into the Barrie Police Service were over 13,600. Where I will specifically draw your attention to, and it'll be available to you later, is we still continue to see a significant increase in our calls for service in regards to mental health calls. So it's over doubled, or a 75% increase that we have seen. I'll just note that part of our calls for service, and we have spoken in the past in regards to intimate partner violence and children being isolated or potentially neglected during the pandemic response. We are participating with Simcoe District Health Unit on a study that they're involved in. The next slide would be a pick 12. What are some interesting items that we responded to? It makes it hard when there isn't a visual. But we continue to see members of our community getting behind the wheel of a car intoxicated by either alcohol and drugs. But we've also seen an increase in our weapons calls in our community. We had an arrest in regards to human trafficking. We've had a sexual assault arrest. We have assisted our paramedics in the community with deploying Narcan of individuals that have been responsive. We've had significant drug calls where we have intercepted delivery and businesses in regards to purple fentanyl and heroin being seized. We've arrested individuals just in a traffic stop, so self-generated incident, and we have seized cocaine, fentanyl, cannabis. We're still working with our other partners across the policing partners across the province on some significant investigations. And I think from a social media perspective, many of you may have seen that we use the app What 3 Words, and we're able to recover a family that were lost in a Art of Bluffs. There are a few things that we have.
See it. Everyone can see it but you.
I can't see it. Okay, I've just been advised that you can see it, but I can't see it. So my apologies, I wasn't aware of that. One of the items that wanted to bring to everybody's attention was Product Packs. It was an investigation that was conducted by our drug enforcement unit, and it had focused on illegal trafficking and possession of cocaine and methamphetamines. It began in early February, this investigation, and included in the month of May, on May the 7th, when we made 2 arrests and we executed 4 search warrants with the help of our internal partners. So we had the Tactical Support Unit, Community Response, Operational Services, and the Intelligence Unit. 2 adults were arrested. They were charged with 25 drug, weapons, and other criminal code offenses. And we seized property which included currency, cocaine, methamphetamines, oxycodone, and we located a loaded revolver and other ammunition. And I just wanted to really highlight this to commend our officers on this very complex investigation and successfully removing drugs from our community and firearms from our street. When we speak to the impact of personal safety warnings, and we've seen an increase, as I've mentioned, in drug activity in our community. This month, we offered or issued or published a public safety warning advising of a dangerous strain of drugs in our community. We had 2 sudden death investigations, and it was suspected that it was a synthetic opiate that is green in color. Since that public safety warning, we have seen 2 additional sudden deaths that we believe are related to overdoses and to this synthetic opiate. And I just learned that there may be another death that occurred last night in that may be suspected under the same thing. So it is extremely important when individuals are going to be using illicit drugs through the public health recommendation that individuals be extra vigilant and cautious and just be aware of what is happening in our community. We also were involved, our street crime unit was involved in a very elaborate investigation involving heavy machinery theft scheme, and we have successfully arrested a male who's been charged with 13 offenses in that area. We have had a busy month during the month of May. The 1st of May is the Provincial First Responders Day, and we did acknowledge and thank our members of the service for the work that they do. The day afterwards, which was May the 2nd, provincially, the first Sunday in May, we acknowledge those that have made the ultimate sacrifice. This year, which is the second year in a row, our ceremony had to be held remotely, but we did provide from the Barrie Police Service and participated in a video acknowledging those that have died in the line of service. The week of May the 3rd to 9th was Canadian Mental Health Awareness Week. And through the work of our wellness unit out of our human resource area, we offered each day of the weekday sessions and virtual messaging from our chaplain and 3 professionals that assisted our members in regards to their overall mental health. We also had Police Week, which was May the 9th to the 15th. And we did a 7-day public awareness campaign encouraging connections between the police and the communities that we serve. So we highlighted some of our partnerships that we have in the community through our St. John Ambulance Therapy dogs, the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, our Coast team in partnership with the Canadian Mental Health Association, highlighted our patroller program with CAA, and once again, we highlighted the Collaborate Barrie program that has been running in the city of Barrie for several years now, and we have 40 partner agencies. So I would say that we may have missed the more traditional face-to-face events that we traditionally do, but it certainly provided us an overview to acknowledge what we do virtually. Just another highlight, we participated, our Marine unit participated with the Canadian Forces in some significant training over our waterways, which was very exciting. And we know that if there is a significant event in our community in the waterways, we will be able to respond significantly. The chair has already mentioned our community safety and well-being plan, and would just like to highlight a couple of areas in regards to, the goals of what we hope to accomplish. So the community safety and well-being plan is to achieve sustainable community where everybody is safe, has a sense of belonging, and has opportunities to participate as families or individuals in their needs to address education, healthcare, food, housing, cultural, and social expression. So the plan commenced development in 2019, and we have an advisory group through the city of Barrie that is reflective of our city and includes the chair and myself on the committee. But where we were able to secure some provincial grant funding, and we hired a consultant from Mass LVP, and Staff Sergeant Gates were the leads in ensuring that we did our community consultation. And our community and consultation involved the healthcare sector, education, housing, emergency responders, social services, mental health and addictions, and our Indigenous people. And as a result of all of that work, we identified some risk factors that we knew were happening in our community. And we have established 15 action items that look at a safer Barrie by working together, connecting our communities and safe communities. And safety is for everybody, and we need to be prepared and protected. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan was approved by General Committee, and on the 31st of May, it goes to Council. So just wanted to thank the community for their work in the focus groups, and do look forward to working with the community on the items that the Barrie Police Service has either been identified as a co-lead or a lead. And that's the conclusion of the Chief's update for the month of May. Chair?
Once again, thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief from the board or community concerns? I realize we're running a little late, but with I trust everybody can hang on for another 10 minutes to finalize the meeting. Ms. Strawn, please.
Thanks. Just a quick question on related to the calls for service and how we categorize those. We've seen, as you said, an increase in mental health calls, but how do we differentiate between mental health calls and, let's say, neighbor dispute or domestic assault, or maybe not domestic assault, that's more clear, but like a family issue? Like some things I think may be provoked because of someone's poor mental health. So I'm just curious how you put things into the different buckets.
So when we speak to mental health concerns, we know that mental health has been an area of concern because we are responding to the pandemic. But when we note in the report there was 132 mental health calls for service, it was specifically categorized when the call came in. It generated by the community, it was identified as a mental health call. We know that there are other calls, whether it is a neighbor dispute, as you mentioned, or intimate partner violence, or some other disputes that we hear in the community. Person gone berserk, that's another category that we have. We know that it's based on mental health. And with the work that we do in partnership with CMHA and our COAST program, we're hoping that we're managing those issues in the community. And part of the community safety and well-being plan has a specific area that will identify mental health. And in mental health, we also know it impacts addictions too. So when we categorize the calls as was displayed in our CAD calls for service, those are specific to the initial concern came in as mental health. We know that it's underlying in other calls for service, whether it be drugs, etc.
Thanks, that's really helpful.
Mr. Khan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief. I just want to get this out there and then happy to be directed to speak offline separately, but I think it's worth noting. I do have a concern regarding the neighborhood policing with specific to crime of opportunity and the growing frustration that's pretty prevalent right now, both on social media as well as in private conversation regarding people unwanted. They're getting more brazen about not just stuff that's like forget the smash and grab, the unlocked car door stuff. It's beyond that now, where there are several incidents, photos and videos being posted online with regard to people entering the backs of people's property, entering their garages, stealing bicycles, stealing other equipment and personal property. And I wanted to get that out there because the feedback is starting to escalate with specific suggestions that people will find that property at the Comfort Inn at Esset and Fairview, where we know who certain tenants are there right now, and the commentary is now, well, the police aren't doing anything about it, we're being ignored. Go there yourself, you'll find your stuff, and that to me is not healthy and is concerning. And I'd like to see what we can do to mitigate that so that things don't escalate unnecessarily.
Thank you very much for that comment. We can discuss a more robust answer to your question, but I can say that you and I have spoken in regards to some of the allegations in regards to the clients that are part of the hoteling program during the pandemic, and we will continue to monitor that. And we do spend time in our community when we receive reports as such, and we do spend time in our community addressing some of the vulnerable individuals.
Thanks, Chief. Any other questions for the Chief or community concerns to be raised? Seeing none, then our next meeting is scheduled for June the 17th, 2021. I thank everyone online for indulging us to run a little bit late here this morning. I motion to adjourn today's meeting. Mr. Khan, we're adjourned. Thanks for everyone for all your hard work. It's clear there's been a lot gone into this. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye,
weekend.
everyone. Have a good day. Happy long weekend.